Hello everyone, we'll begin our presentation. Here's a quick outline of what we'll cover. First, the artwork explanation and the key quotes and the conclusion. As you can see, the title is The Woman Had to Be Naked to Get into the Met Museum. Before getting to the artwork, who is Guerrilla Girls? The Guerrilla Girls are an anonymous feminist art collective that began in 1980s in New York City. The imagery focuses on museums showed very few works by women artists, but displayed countless female nudes, as we all know since long ago. Their strategy was visual confrontation. They appropriate Ingres' grand obelisk, replacing the face with a gorilla mask, turning the classical nude into a critique of objectification. And bold colors and text drew attention. This poster began with an actual data from the Metropolitan Museum. They counted how many women artists were shown versus how many female nudes appeared in the museum. This imbalance became the basis of their central question. Do women have to be naked to get into the Met Museum? Originally, this was intended to be a billboard, but the Public Art Fund rejected it for its lack of clarity. But they anyway self-funded and show it to the public as buzz advertisement. However, the message feels extremely clear, so the real issue might not have been clarity but discomfort. This poster mainly visualizes the idea of woman as other, women framed as subjects of the gaze rather than creators of culture.
The quote that I chose from the reading was from Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex. It reads as followed. Now what peculiarly signalizes the situation of woman is that she, a free and autonomous being like all human creatures, nevertheless finds herself living in a world where men compel her to assume the status of other. My connection to the media is, this quote directly correlates with the message that the Guerrilla Girls are trying to convey. Female artists are underrepresented in the Met, while female bodies are overrepresented as objects in art. This illustrates how women are defined in relation to men, rather than being as their own being. This connects back to the discussions on the ability of women. Society tends to celebrate women for their beauty and physical appearance. There is little appreciation for the woman as a whole, little appreciation for women as individuals with compelling perspectives. The focus on appearance over substance reinforces the idea that women exist primarily for the consumption and judgment of others, rather than as independent creators, thinkers, and visionaries. Discussion continued. Throughout history, women in paintings have generally been symbolized as a clear protagonist, whether she be a mother, a saint, a queen, or a muse. Art has depicted women in every form, emphasizing their beauty, sensuality, and virtue. This ties back into class discussions on if women are seen as these holy, virtuous, pure beings. Why aren't they seen in positions of power? Why aren't their voices elevated to the same effect? Why are they depicted as objects or props to further define the narrative of man? The advertisement by the Guerrilla Girls boldly exposes this persistent pattern of sexism. They call to light what has become normal in cultural institutions. Women are celebrated for their appearance, but their creative and intellectual contributions are undervalued or ignored. Only by amplifying women's minds and perspectives can the art world and society more broadly begin to address the treatment of women as the other, rather than as equal participants in shaping culture and history.
The quote I chose from Naomi Sheman is feminist philosophers have carried the question of philosophy, asking who is this we, whose problems this art, out of whose experiences do they arise, and from whose perspective are they salient. Sheman is basically saying that philosophy often speaks as if it represents everyone, but the supposed we it shows as mostly reflect the experience of privileged men. This connects directly to what we talk about in class, about who gets to shape knowledge and whose voices are taken seriously. We saw that when only one group defines the question and the method, other perspectives become invisible. It's similar to what we discuss with representation in art. Women appear constantly as subjects, but rarely as recognized artists. In philosophy, women exist, obviously, but they live experiences that haven't been treated as important for shaping the field's main question. This ties into your discussion on epistemic authority, who is believed, who gets to speak, and who gets ignored. The philosophical we pretend to be universal, but it's actually grounded in a very specific male viewpoint. Just like the Guerrilla Girl expose the gap between women being visible in artwork but no value as creator, Sheman points out a similar gap in philosophy. Her critique encourages us to pay attention to which perspectives are treated as a norm and which ones are excluded, and she argued that philosophy can only truly evolve if it starts including the life experiences of a wider and more diverse we.
Hi, I want to discuss how this quote from Nell Noddings' book, Women and Evil, illuminates the central message of the Guerrilla Girls' graphic. So let's begin with this quote. Women equals body, and women as body, as vessel, has been worshipped, coveted, feared, and hated. Let's focus on this first half over here with women equals body. This illuminates the fact that the social value of women have historically been fixed in their physical form. The similar message that Guerrilla Girls are trying to illuminate, that even in New York City, even in the Metropolitan Museum, in such a progressive area, the historical value of women and the social value of women are fixed in their physical form. And so this, to Nell Noddings, is what leads the view of women to be seen as evil, right? By focusing on the matters of the flesh, men have viewed women as evil sources of temptation, right? As she describes in the Devil's Gateway chapter of Women and Evil, she outlines how women have been seen as the Devil's Gateway. Now, this describes the feared and hated part of this quote, where women have been feared and hated, but they've also been worshipped and coveted. In this same museum, you see how women are worshipped and coveted for their beauty, and are literally put on a pedestal in this museum, right? So this graphic and this quote from Nell Noddings both kind of highlight how you can also be worshipped and coveted while also being feared and hated. And lastly, this graphic juxtaposes the display of female nudity in the museum with the lack of works from women artists in the museum. This also illuminates the idea of how women are worshipped and coveted as artistic subjects, while individually the artists are institutionally ignored. So not just as women being feared or hated, but artists are also being ignored for their works. That's my take. Thank you for listening.
So, in conclusion, the Guerrilla Girls point out how museums like the Met show far more images of nude women than artwork actually created by women artists. This isn't random or accidental. It comes from long-standing systems that value women more for how they look than for what they can create. Even though women appear frequently in museums, they are much less visible as artists, which shows a clear imbalance in how recognition is given. Simone de Beauvoir's idea of women being the other helps explain why this happens. Women may be everywhere visually in art and culture, but that doesn't mean they hold real power or status. Instead, their presence is often controlled and shaped by male perspectives, which keeps women from being fully recognized as equal contributors. This connects to what we talked about in class regarding whose voices are treated as important and whose experiences are pushed aside. Nell Noddings also helps us understand this issue by pointing out how women are often reduced to their bodies. A lot of art and media focuses heavily on women's appearance, while their ideas, creativity, and viewpoints are ignored. This creates a situation where women are constantly seen but not truly valued. The Guerrilla Girls highlight this contradiction by showing how women can both be overrepresented as images and underrepresented as artists at the same time. By calling attention to these patterns, the Guerrilla Girls challenge us to rethink what we've come to see as normal. The work encourages us to question museums, media, and cultural institutions, and to push for fairer representation, where women are recognized not just as subjects, but as creators, thinkers, and active participants in shaping art and society. And here's our bibliography.